Optical illusions. They confuse our eyes and trick our brains, and we don't see what's actually in front of us. Today, we're going to learn all about the eye, the structure of the eye, and the miraculous way it allows us to see the world around us. This lesson is on the eye and the structure of the eye. So, we have lots of different sensory receptors in our bodies. We have photoreceptors in our eyes. They have two different types called rods and cones, and the stimulus is visible light. We also have different chemoreceptors in our body, which are both our taste and smell receptors, which pick up chemicals in the environment. And we have mechanoreceptors, and these receptors help tell us what's happening to our body and in our body, whether it's the position of our body or whether we are being touched or squeezed. We also have thermoreceptors in our body, which respond to temperature changes on our skin. So it allows us to sense cold and hot. So when we're looking at the structure of the eye, we have the main parts of the vertebra eye. We have the sclera, which is the white outer layer, and this includes the cornea. It's quite firm and helps the eye keep its shape. We have the choroid, or the pigmented layer, and this is near the back of the eye. We have the iris, which regulates the size of the pupil, and this is the colored part of our eyes. The retina, which contains the photoreceptors. This is the functional part of the eye when it comes to vision. The lens, which focuses the light on the retina. This is also where the light travels through. The optic disc, which is a blind spot in the back of the retina where the optic nerve attaches to the eye. Well, the eye has three different layers. We have the sclera, which is the white outermost layer, the choroid layer, and the retina. The sclera is a very firm part of the eye. It helps protect the eye and maintains the eye's shape. The only part of the sclera that is clear is the white part or clear part that covers the pupil and the iris. Now, the pupil is just an opening through the iris where light will travel through. And it helps bend the light towards the pupil. So the cornea is transparent and it requires oxygen and nutrients, just like every other body cell, but these aren't supplied by blood vessels. So most of the oxygen is absorbed from gases dissolved in tears. So this is why we always need to keep our eyes damp. And the nutrients are supplied by the aqueous humor, which is a liquid right behind the cornea in front of the lens. So the choroid layer is the middle of the eye and it contains blood vessels, and this goes all around towards the back as well. And it has pigmented granules that prevent the light that has entered the eye from scattering. So it's going to help absorb and control that light. Towards the front of the choroid is the iris. And this is composed of a muscular tissue that controls the size of the pupil opening. So when we're in highlight situations, that iris will squeeze down so our pupil is small. And when we're in dim light situations, our iris will expand to allow more light in through the pupil. And then the lens is found behind the iris, and this is going to flatten or relax to focus light on the retina, depending if we're looking at things that are far away or close up. And this is done by the ciliary muscles, and so they alter the shape of the lens. Behind the lens and in front of the retina is the vitreous humor. And like the aqueous humor at the back, it helps provide nutrients and other things to the parts of the eye. And it is more of a jelly-like material. So that aqueous humor at the front is really liquid-like, and the vitreous humor at the back is more of a jelly-like material. And it helps maintain the shape of the eyeball, and again, has to be transparent to allow light to enter the retina. The retina is the innermost layer of the eye. It has three different layers of cells. We have our light-sensitive cells, which would be the rods and cones, bipolar cells, so the neurons that are in the eye, and cells from the optic nerve. And the light sensitive layer is next to the choroid layer. And like I said, there are two types: rods, which are stimulated by low intensity light and really help us see motion, and then cones, which require high intensity light. And this is where we identify color. So cones identify color. So we have that C alliteration for both of those terms. So both the rods and the cones are sensory receptors. And like our sensory receptors anywhere in their body, once they've reached their threshold level for stimulus. They are excited and they send a nerve message. So the rods and cones will then send a message to the bipolar cells, which then will follow to the cells of the optic nerve and go to our central nervous system in our brain. And that will travel to our occipital region at the back of our head. Now, on the retina, we have a fovea centralis, which is a tiny depression in the back of the retina, and this is where we have most of the cones in our eye. This is the spot where we have the most detailed vision. So if you're reading a paper and we're moving our eyes slowly, what we're doing is we're keeping those really fine, detailed printing right in our fovea centralis. And most of the light rays will fall on this fovea centralis. Rods are going to surround cones in kind of like the outer regions, and they really allow us to have a good periphery vision. So our periphery vision, again, is the side vision that we have. Now, we can see an object in its periphery, but we're not able to identify its color because it's the rods that are telling us, hey, there's something that's moving on our periphery. And so you can try this with a marker, and you can just pick it up and kind of move it slowly from the back to the front of your head until you can see it wiggling, and then see if you can identify its color until you come closer around to the front. Now, where the blind spot is, this is where the optic nerve attaches to the retina, and we're not able to have any rods and cones in this area. So when light falls on that, we don't have any visual perception. However, because our eyes are always moving, we don't perceive a blind spot in our vision. Our brain just fills it in with information that it knows should be there. So we have the sclera, the outermost layer of the eye, the choroid layer with all the blood vessels and those light scattering it collects the light pigments. The retina, which is composed of 3 layers, including our rods and cones. The fovea centralis, which is the center of our visual field, that is our most compact area of cones. The optic nerve. And then we have the artery and vein of the retina. Then they have our blind spot where the optic nerve connects to the retina. Our vitreous humor, so that jelly-like solution in the back of the eye. The lens, which focuses light onto the retina. The aqueous humor at the front, which provides nutrients and oxygen to the front of the eye. The pupil, which is an opening to allow light to pass through. The iris, which controls the opening of the pupil. The cornea, which then focuses light towards the pupil. Suspensory ligaments, which hold on to the lens, and they're controlled by the ciliary body or ciliary muscles, which control the shape of the lens to help us focus light onto the retina. Okay, well, there was our lesson on the structure of the vertebra eye. Thanks for joining. Catch you guys next time.